But she wasn't alone. She brought back a crowd of noble guests, secretly thinking, and among them was the illustrious Miss Ingram. She had originally planned to write a letter in her study, but was interrupted by the butler. That evening, she finally got a close-up look at the two legendary celebrities, with the elegant Miss Ingram being particularly captivating. With polite speech and elegant manners exuding an air of noble pride, Jane quietly absorbed that sense of arrogance, and suddenly a moment of enlightenment dawned upon her. If this kind of woman was her ideal match, then she shouldn't have had any hopes from the start. Taking advantage of Miss Ingram flaunting her skills in the parlour, Jane quietly slipped away. To her surprise, Rochester chased after her, saying, "Why didn't you come talk to me? I haven't seen you in weeks, and you seem a bit upset. You appear to be in a terrible state, while I'm feeling absolutely great." Jane, it was just like an explosion going off. All the guests were suddenly jolted awake. Rochester came out to calm everyone, saying it was just a servant having a bad dream, encouraging them to head back to their rooms. But once the crowd dispersed, he led Jane with a serious expression, quietly ascending the staircase, where a smell of blood hung in the air. Mason lay there, pale as a ghost. One side of his body was soaked in blood, eyes shut tight. Rochester told Jane to check on Mason while he went to fetch a doctor. Jane stood in that dim room, her mind racing with questions, why the fire one moment and the blood the next. Rochester seemed like a man consumed by secrets, unable to expose them or escape. The doctor finally arrived at dawn to take Mason away. Jane wanted answers, but Rochester wouldn't spell a single word. Who is he talking about? Jane restrained her emotions as he leaned in, subtly placing a little flower by her ear, his gaze soft enough to melt hearts. Jane thought he was talking about Miss Ingram, so she quietly stepped back, letting this unclaimed love drift away. A letter yanked Jane back from the emotional whirlpool. The cousin who once bullied her had committed suicide. Before his death, he squandered away the family's property, and his aunt couldn't bear the double blow and fell ill. At this moment, a socialite made a request to see Jane, speaking in a low voice. Yet it still held a hint of old arrogance. Her aunt informed her that 3 years ago, her Uncle John had written a letter wishing to leave the inheritance to his only niece. However, he replied saying Jane had already passed away. His calling her back wasn't out of remorse but fear of the consequences of that cursed letter. Upon hearing this, Jane did not get excited. She merely spoke in a calm tone, then quietly turned and departed from the place that had ensnared her entire childhood. At Gateshead Hall, her uncle had brought her written a letter. No matter how twisted fate became, she was no longer the little girl yearning for a shred of affection. The nightmare of her childhood finally came to an end. She returned to Thornfield with a newfound lightness of spirit, and once again saw Rochester. She felt joy deep in her heart, but just when she thought everything would settle down, the butler told her Rochester was about to get married. Jane calmly bid him farewell, brainstorming her escape, but Rochester tugged at her heartstrings all over again. "It's like I have a rope tangled under my left rib, and it feels tight like you. If you leave, I worry that rope might get caught. I will take that rope and let it float in the sea, and you would forget me." "Really? I've lived this long, so I leave. It's because of your wife." "I don't have a wife." "But you're already married, Pearl. You absolutely must stay. Am I just some kind of machine without feelings? You think I'm too outdated, too common. My heart isn't in it. But in reality, you fill my heart. If God let me go, I'd let you leave, I'd set you free. I'm not talking about you, because my physical death is the spirit in my heart, just as your spirit lives in my heart. We've both walked through the grave at the feet of God, and now I must leave you to become a free person. Well then, let destiny make the decision. I give you my heart, Jane. I ask you to bring back the happiness beside me. You are my balance and my love. Will you marry me? He stood there, resembling the gentlest feather in the entire world. With fate reaching out a hand, it was the happiest moment of his life. For the next month, Jane felt as if she were living in a dream. The warm spring sun basked on their shoulders, and Rochester's gaze was filled with affection. Jane thought happiness had finally arrived for the girl who had never been truly. One fine morning, Jane donned her wedding dress, standing with Rochester in the church, ready to embark on their new life. But just as they were about to say their vows, an unforeseen hiccup popped up. Continue. An unavoidable obstacle arises. Act. I confess and proclaim action. Edward Fairfax Rochester, married 15 years ago to my sister, Bertha Antoinetta Mason. At St. James Church in Spanish Town, Jamaica. Here's my certificate. Qualifications already in my hands, proving Richard Mason. She resides at Thornfield Hall. Moments later, Rochester lost it and stormed back into the estate to personally open that wine-soaked chamber. This is Bertha Antoinetta Mason, my wife. Her hair is all over the place, eyes vacant, mumbling incoherently. She's the one who set the fire that night. Under the silent gaze of the crowd, Rochester finally unveiled the secret hiding in Thornfield Hall 15 years ago. Under the family's arrangement, Rochester was to marry Mason that night. She was born into a wealthy family. Father and brother had no qualms about the marriage, and she, being young and null, they gradually noticed her strange and erratic temperament soon after. She asked her in-laws about it, but found they had been hiding the family's common mental illness. She could have sent her to the asylum, but ultimately decided to keep her close. She was confined in the attic of the estate she once longed to escape, but felt obligated to stay, enduring storms as she could only avoid. Rochester stood before her like a man about to lose everything. Her eyes reflected desperation, anger, and an unwillingness to let go. Jane gazed at her, her heart unyielding and steady, pleading fervently. This scene was just too absurd.